Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andres Groves. I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, David Wyatt-Hupton. David, how are you doing today?
Doing all good. Rangers game 7 tonight, so I'm absolutely bricking it about that. But apart from that, all good. Sun's out, so yeah.
Yeah, and I know you like your New York sports, and I saw CJ Uzama also was at the Mets game, wasn't he?
He was chilling with the guys. Yeah, I always quite like seeing that.
When the kind of the different sports attend different ones in New York, especially if you're a fan of the different teams, right? Like, I guess you're not a fan of the Islanders. That was a pretty cool experience for the Jets to all help the Islanders game last year.
Yeah, since the Giants are all over the Rangers this year. That's kind of how it happens, how it mixes. Brian Dable was talking about going to game 7 tonight. So
right,
yeah,
it's cool. Everyone's supporting each other locally in all the city. I mean, there's been a lack of success with all the sports, right? So I think New York sports needs to come back in a big way, and hopefully, we're part of that as well. And maybe not so much the Giants, but they do look in good shape, to be honest, in terms of where they're going. But I think I'm very happy with where we're going, and we look at this schedule, right? So today we're going to basically just jump into the schedule release and go through the games, some of the matchups that our guys are going to go into, the individual grouping matchups as well. We'll just break it down in terms of. It's going to be a very simple show, just covering the schedule release. We've had a little bit of news since we last recorded, but that's kind of passed a little bit. It's all been about the schedule release, so we'll keep it on topic. So, David, what is your general thoughts about the schedule release?
Well, I love the schedule release video that you sent. That was awesome.
Oh yeah, well the schedule release.
Yeah,
is
the
great.
animation was superb.
Yeah,
but the schedule in general, I quite like it. I don't actually mind having that tough start. I think there is a bit of a baptism by fire that first kind of 3-4 week schedule, but then we also get to end the season with what is on paper a nice run of games as well. So we knew the opposition. I'm never too bothered about the schedule release, to be perfectly honest. I just want to know the times to figure out how many late nights we're going to have and how many primetime kind of shows. But
we're not there yet, are we? Yet we still get.
We're not in primetime.
I saw our friends Andrew and Matt at the Oklahoma Draw podcast were giving a shout out to the UK and European fans who don't have to stay up late for many games. We've only got that Jacksonville one, so that's obviously a bonus for us fans over here. I mean, I guess you do like to see the recognition. I mean, the recognition will come. There's going to be a time when I do believe, when we're a good team, we're going to have 3 or 4 or 5 primetime games, and you're going to have to manage them, David. But that's a trade-off I think you'll gladly accept if the Jets become a really good powerhouse team in the league, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and maybe some of our games this year get flexed because we're in the hunt for the playoffs.
Possibly,
that's the best case scenario that some of our late season games get flexed. So, I'll definitely take some winning football over early nights. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So we break it down. So that, as you said, it's an early start. There's a difficult start to begin. We get the whole AFC North, to begin. Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Steelers, which is an interesting thing to go through a whole division in your first 4 games. Interesting to not mix up at least once, but Ravens one's an interesting one to kick off the game. I think a lot of people saw it and I just go, oh no, like what a terrible game. But I think it's one of those ones where if you had a team that was kind of a decent team but not a really strong team, you would kind of go, well, you kind of, even last year's game, it was like the loss to Carolina probably was worse because we were like, oh, it's Darnold, we'll get them, we'll beat them. And then when we lost that game, it almost feels worse. Like if you really give it a good shot, as long as you kind of stay competitive, you don't get embarrassed. I think there's a lot to take away even from a loss in that first game, and you get one of those games out of the way, and you learn from it, and and I think having that experience from learning and competing against one of the best teams first week out is going to be a really good experience. So I'm all for it. Even though yes, the more you break down that team, you're like, wow, how are we gonna move the ball against this? Like they're very talented. When you look at the depth chart of the Ravens, they're a very, very, very talented team across the board. And probably the wide receiver core is probably the only part that you go, okay, that's not too bad. But they've got weapons elsewhere. And we know what they do in the run game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think offensively, stopping Lamar Jackson is going to be number one. Our linebackers can be a little bit undisciplined when we play quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, so that's going to be a big view this year because we didn't really upgrade the linebackers. A lot of us thought we should have done that, and we didn't. We chose not to. So that's going to be interesting to see what we do. But I mean, the Baltimore had a great draft as well. I liked their roster before that draft, and I think they took pretty much most of my favourite players.
I mean,
so
they have a great team, and they add, they took Linderbaum, they took Travis Jones, Carl Hamilton as well added there, and I think it was a Jabo, right? I mean, Jabo might take a while. He won't
Ajabo.
be probably ready for our game, but I mean, they've got
Pick Charlie
plenty.
Kohler as well.
Yeah,
So
Charlie
adding
Kohler
Charlie
and
Kohler to
Isaiah
Mark
Likely as
Andrews.
well. So you've got the three-headed tight end. I mean, you're talking about our three-head tight end. I mean, they've got, Mark Andrews, who's one of the best in the league, and then you had really two promising rookies in Kohler and Likely that they took kind of both in the similar. I think in the same round. I think they took both those guys. So yeah,
Yeah, and you can split Isaiah Likely. So a lot of people are kind of looking at their wide receiver, and it's noticeably one of their weakest units of their whole team.
yeah,
But also they'll probably split Likely out as a wide receiver quite a lot. So you will have Bateman and you'll have Likely and you have a few other guys in there. So it's not by any means a cakewalk kind of wide receiving unit.
no,
Um, we'll face tougher ones. When Cincinnati come in, they've probably got the best receiving trio in the league, so that's going to be quite interesting to see them. And that's going to be a really one of our big first tests. But I think defensively for the Jets in Week 1, the linebackers are going to get tested. And it's going to be interesting to see how they hold up because Baltimore are a fantastic team. They're a very smart team. Offensively, we're going to really have to be on our game. We're going to have to come out well because defensively they're very, very good.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a great test, but I don't mind having that test in Week 1. I'd rather kind of jump straight in and just see what we've got, and
Yeah.
the expectation is not going to be there. We'll open up as severe underdogs. I imagine. we'll be 5 points down, and
Well, it's
spread or
4.5 at
whatever
the
it is.
moment, right? And I think
So that's not bad.
and I think if no injuries happen, I think that the amount of betting on the Jets, just the confidence from the New York area, may bump that down a little bit. So it may actually be less if it goes, but an injury here or there could mean more or less confidence depending when we get to that Week 1 game. But yeah, opened at I think it's pretty respectable 4.5. I think it shows the respect that the Jets have got for what they're building. If people say they're not there yet, but we're liking what they're doing, and I think that respects it when you're seeing against one of the better teams in the NFL. So no, I difficult game. Love the start though because like I said, it gives us a real benchmark of where we're at and kind of get that one out of the way as well. I think
And
it's
it's at home,
useful,
isn't it? I
and
mean, I
it's at
love starting
home
at home.
on
But
9/11. There's going to be
it's
that natural emotion that happens, because of the day, and if it gives us a shot, it gives us a shot at an upset. So we'll see what happens with that one. I think, obviously we'll get to that game a lot. We'll be looking at it as the first game. We're going to be focusing on that one a lot, but we'll move on to the rest of the games. I think what's interesting is, as we do face the AFC North straight away, we potentially will see what happens with the whole Deshaun Watson situation. We may not face him. We will be facing Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, which is for our two away games. That's with that Steelers game in Week 4 as well. Do you think that's obviously a good thing? I mean, do you think that the NFL are going to do anything about the Watson situation, or are they just going to allow him to play from Week 1?
I don't know, to be honest. So, I read quite a lot. A lot of people are expecting that this investigation, the NFL investigation, is going to last quite a while, and we probably won't see a Deshaun Watson suspension in 2022, but it'll probably come in 2023.
Yeah,
I think I don't know. I just don't know if the NFL is going to want to keep it hanging over their heads for another year. So, that's going to be an interesting one to watch. I mean, the Browns change significantly if Deshaun Watson's not behind center, and
yeah,
they become far less scary team proposition for
massive
us.
difference, right? And that's how good of a player he is on the field for
Yeah, he's a
everything.
fantastic player.
Yeah,
I mean,
incredible.
that's why
Yeah.
a lot of us wanted him when he first came up in trade rumors before, the legal issues that he's now facing.
Yeah,
Before that
absolutely,
all happened, people
yeah.
were clamoring for the New York
He's
Jets to
top
trade
5,
for
right?
him.
On the field, he's a top 5 QB in this
At his
league.
best, he is
Yeah.
undoubtedly a top 5 QB,
Yeah.
and he makes everyone around him better, which is exactly what a good QB should do.
Mm.
But the Cleveland Browns set up quite well in the trenches. Offensive line, they've got a really good offensive line, probably one of the best in the league if they all stay healthy.
Yeah.
So that's another bit where our defensive line is going to get tested. So this is another test. This is kind of our first test for Carl Lawson and Quinnen, see what he's doing this year, and Jermaine Johnson, and we're all kind of excited about this defensive line. They're going to get tested straight away with Cleveland because Cleveland
and Baltimore, right?
Baltimore's got a great line. Cleveland have got a great line.
Yeah.
So we're going to find out how good this line could potentially be because it's all very well beating up on poor offensive lines, but if you really want to go to where you want to get to in terms of the Jets, you need to beat up on good players,
or at least match up, right? And at least make it, like a, you got to match up and say hold your own against the best of the best. That if you want to be up there, you've got to really be up there, kind of having one blow for you, one blow for me at the very worst. You can't be
Yeah.
dominated at least. So no, very like I said, I really like this start because like I said, it's difficult and we could be 0 and we could be 0 and 4 very realistically. Um, but I think it's where we need it to be. Like I just don't want to hide and run. I think we want an easy start. What's that going to do? We just load up on all the teams. I do understand, like you get that running start, but you saw last year Broncos, the Panthers, specifically, they were a disaster at the end of the season, and they started off 3-0 because they just got easier opponents to start off the season, and it gave that false sense of where they were as a team, and then they found it difficult afterwards. So yeah, I think this is really good for us. I do think that we've got a lot of talent added to this team, and it's time to show up and actually make it hard against the better teams in this league, even if we don't pull out the win. So yeah, so then obviously we roll on from those 4 games. We got our first division game home to Miami, home against Miami, which is great. We also are home against New England in week 8 and Buffalo in week 9. So we get all our division games at home first, and then we're away for the second half of the season. So, how do you feel about having those? Before the bye, we get 3 home games against the division rivals, and then afterwards we get the away games after the bye. How do you feel about that?
I don't mind it. I'm quite glad that Miami's the first one, the first home game. That's going to be a good test because I kind of see us and Miami relatively close in terms of talent level.
Yeah.
So getting them at home first is swings the advantage to us. And also coming off that 4 game shot. I mean, Pittsburgh not necessarily a overly tough matchup at the minute. I don't think.
No.
They're that great. So that run of Pittsburgh, then Miami, and then going to then obviously you got Green Bay, but
And Denver.
And Denver. So
It is
there
difficult.
is a little bit of
It's
a
no
run
doubt
there.
it's difficult. And like I said, we'll get to this game. Yeah, it's the only thing with Green Bay is they come back from London, and then we go so they're coming back from London. And we head over to Lambeau, so that makes a little bit of a help. You can imagine because it's the first time they've ever been over to London as well. So I'm sure they've probably got they've got enough people in the building who are going to get them sorted out absolutely fine. But there is a sense that you can probably get a little bit of an advantage from that. But then we're off to Denver as well, which is not a place that we do generally that well. And obviously last year was especially bad against as what we found out was a very mediocre team, and we lost 26-0, and that was before they got Russell Wilson. So those 2 games going away to Lambeau and away to Mile High against Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson is just another massive test for the defense and where we're at, and for Zach Wilson and the offense to kind of keep up, because that's I think the only way we're going to do is to really we're going to have to put up points because the defense is not going to be this elite shutdown. I think there's going to be massive strides. I do believe in the defensive improvement. I think they're going to have games where they take over. They also have the games when they just let up probably because they're still not 100% there, and the offense is just going to have to pull their weight on certain games as well. So that that stretch, and then you home to New England and home to Buffalo. So the home games, but massive mentally against Bill Belichick after what happened last year, and then Buffalo, one of the best teams in the league. So there's no hiding from it. That first 9 games is really really tough, but if we're going to be a good team, and I think we've got a lot of talent, and if Zach's the guy, we're going to be competitive in these games, and we could split these games, 4-5, 3-6 is probably what we could do. That would probably set us well for the end of the season. If we can get that into the bye, that probably puts us well. So yeah, it's difficult, right?
Yeah, it's really difficult, and I've kind of been. I was looking at this is the first year of actually following NFL for so many years and schedules. First year I actually saw what they calling it the best rest edge. Have you seen that? Warren Sharp's put out kind of what
Right,
teams have the rest in comparison to their opponents,
right,
and it's
yes,
kind of an unfair advantage. So say Buffalo have 10 days and they're playing Denver, who have been 7 days. Buffalo would have a +3 rest
+3,
advantage,
yeah, and then you calculate that
and
throughout
you
the league, yeah.
calculate it. And Buffalo actually came out top of all the NFL. They are +12, +12, and the Jets and the Patriots are both in the bottom 5. So it's just interesting to see how these kind of shake out. The Jets are they -8 and the Patriots are -10. I didn't even know people
Wow,
looked at this. This is kind of the first time I've ever actually seen this. Um,
-8, wow,
-8. So and the Patriots even worse. So the NFL actually do control it. So we can't even talk about a Patriots bias or anything like that. But maybe there's a Buffalo bias nowadays.
No, I
But
just think that there's not something that they focus on making a point to spread that out. I don't think at this point. I mean, the more people start focusing on it, maybe the schedule makers will focus on that. Maybe I just don't think that they've they account for, when you played last week, if you played Thursday night, if you play the Thanksgiving game, for example, the teams that play there will also play. A lot of them play on the Thursday afterwards, or they get two teams from that Thursday slate to play the next Thursday, and they do things like this. But I don't think they're factoring like that what Warren Sharp has put out there, which is actually interesting. And the more people focus on it, that's when it's going to become more of
because
a
that swing between Buffalo at +12 and the Patriots at -10, that's quite a lot. That's 22
22.
extra rest days.
Yeah,
Like, that's
that's actually massive
significant in
throughout
a
the
very
season.
physical sport.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's really interesting. Apparently it's been around for a few years, but I've actually this is the first year I've actually seen it come across and looked at it and like, yeah, that's quite a good point actually, that there are some teams that are going to get significantly more rest than their opponents, and there's some people, the +3s, +4 type ones. They're the ones that are kind of like, oh, I don't know if the NFL have really thought about that one because yeah, it's slightly unfair.
yeah,
And
that's it.
Miami's +5, so
Plus
Miami's kind of on
five.
the plus side as well.
Yeah, I would say that I know the Jets are one of the lower traveling teams in terms of air miles, though.
Mm.
So swings and roundabouts, maybe, right? And but these things will come and go as they, maybe we look at previous years and maybe it flipped, So we don't know too much about. We have to. It's something that we keep a track of each year. I think it's actually a very interesting stat, and to see how that works out with the different teams. But I think that the way I'm not too fussed. I think the way that things worked out, like I said, we get New England after a bye. Do they have a week 10 bye as well? I think they have a week 10 bye. I'm trying to remember
Don't
when
know.
they're
I haven't looked at those.
because if they don't get the week 10 bye, then we have that bye week going into that New England game going up to Gillette, which is useful. But I'm sure they probably have that as well. Just
I
that
think
we'll be
so.
on bye. We'll probably be on bye at the same time with them, just so we don't get that little bit of a weak advantage on
Go on
them as
holiday
well.
together. We could all meet in
Go
Florida and
on.
have a nice holiday.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's a good bye week though, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
I,
it
I
is.
hate early buys. Like last week we had was it week 6? Was it week 6 we had a buy
Yeah,
after
because it
London?
was we took the week after the London trip. We
Yeah.
actually took the
I mean
option,
that's
which
far too early, and kind of we saw towards the end of the season how many of our players actually ended up. The
yeah,
last 2-3 games, we're barely putting a NFL roster out
I
there, were we?
mean that
We had
Buffalo
Tariq
game was
Black as our number
ridiculous.
one
Yeah,
wide receiver, and
yeah,
so we need to having that week 10 buy as it's almost perfect positioning to especially after such a tough first 9 games. It's going to be a really physical, especially AFC North is probably considered the most physical division in football and has been for the last 20, 30, 40 years. So, it's going to be a very tough start of the season for us. Week 10, we get a little bit of a rest up, head into New England, and yeah, go and beat Bill. Because
yeah,
I actually wrote down that New England and the Jets, I think the Jets actually match up pretty well with New England this year. With
yeah,
JC Jackson gone, age in defense, didn't take a
yeah.
corner early, which we thought they were going to. Then you got Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. You got these quick, speedy, explosive wide receivers. I think we could cause them quite a lot. If we can maintain their rush and see where they're coming from, and Zach just plays in control. I think our wide receivers match up really well with their secondary. I think we could do some damage in those games.
We can run the ball really. We should be able to run the ball really well.
Should be
Obviously,
able to.
with Brees and Michael Carter with the line. If Mackay comes back and can be part of that line on top of everyone else, we've got AVT, Lake, and Tomlinson as well. These guys are really good in the run game, and we should be able to really have a good balance, in both parts of the attack. So, yeah, I do think so. But you always hold your breath with New England, especially going up to Gillette, right? Because it's just a place of nightmares. You see that lighthouse and the gap in the stadium. You're like, this is a nightmare scenario for our
It's
guys in
got to
green.
change at some point.
It has to change. I've said it has to change. It has to change at some point because just the talent isn't there. Like it's like Bill Belichick's almost doing what like Alex Ferguson did with United, where it's like he's just out coaching the talent that's there just to raise it above expectation ridiculously. When he goes, they're just going to plummet just like United did because the next person can't coach as well as that with the lack of talent that's on that team. They lack the talent. They haven't done anything for Matt Jones this year really of worth other than I mean, if you call Tyquan Thornton in the second round reach as something doing for Matt Jones, well, maybe help stretch the field. But has Matt Jones got the arm?
Ty Montgomery,
To...
I guess.
Ty Montgomery, really, we've seen Ty, dude. Come on, that's not
That's
much
what I
enough,
mean. They're
mate.
like Ty Montgomery and
I mean,
Tyquan Thornton are the two guys they brought in to help.
yeah. It, yeah, they got some good players, right? We know they're running some of the running game. They already had a good running game already. That's probably going to stay the same. But I don't, I think we can go up. We don't have to be scared of them. That's the most thing. There's no need to be scared. Don't think about what happened in MetLife. Don't worry about what happened in Gillette. You go out there against this team with the new team that we have and the players that we've got. We go attack them. We can get those. I think we can get those, at least split them. We got to split at least. But we come back from the bye, go to Gillette, and then you look at the end of the schedule. It's home against Chicago, who you think they could be one of the teams that are struggling the most this year. With they're kind of really rebuilding. They're not really putting the weapons around Justin Field. You go away to Minnesota, first year head coach. You don't know where they're going. They may be in transition somewhat. They've got some good players, of course, but you never know where they are. Buffalo away, which is nice to not have it in week 17 or 18. We've got it a bit a bit earlier, but it's still a very, very difficult matchup. But then home against the Lions, home against the Jags, away to Seattle, and that's coming off that Thursday night game. So we've actually got 3 days of rest before we fly over our one flight over to the West Coast, which is really good. So and then we also have a second away game to in a row to finish with Miami, which is a nice place to finish weather-wise. It's a good place to finish the season when you're in January. So no, you can see it's front loaded. The quality on the front side of the bar on before the bye is far superior on paper than what you have in the back end. But if we can hold water in the first part of before the bye, if we go into the bye, like I said, 3 or 6, 4 and 5, I think we can really make a decent run of being contention for a wildcard spot potentially with that run in if we kind of learn the lessons that we may go through in that first 9 games. So yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the schedule in general. Where do we compare, in terms of, we look at those AFC East opponents, and you said, we've talked about Buffalo, we talked about Miami, we talked about New England. I mean, Buffalo. Do you think that there's a chance that we can actually sneak one off them potentially at home? Maybe. I mean, is that even a shot, or is that just put an L on both
Yeah, I
those
think
games?
so. I mean, Buffalo lost to Jacksonville last year, so didn't Buffalo get shut out
That's
by
true.
Jacksonville like 12-0 or something last year? So there's always
I think it
that
was
one,
nine
especially good
nothing. Nine
teams.
nothing.
It was a crazy.
Yeah.
I watched part of that game, and Josh Allen and everyone just forgot how to play football for 60 minutes. And I think there's always that risk with highly tipped, highly anticipated teams like Buffalo are in 2022. So we will take a game like that from someone. I don't know who it's going to be. It might be Buffalo, it might be Cincinnati, but one of those teams that are heavily favored against us, I'm pretty sure we're going to beat one of those teams because we always do. And that's just the way that it goes. So I'd love to split it with Buffalo. If we can take one from Buffalo, just because of the positioning in the group, that just helps significantly if we can just split that series 50-50. But Buffalo are the best team in our division. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah.
Miami have done some good things. I mean, Tyreek Hill is going to move the button for him if Tua can get him the football.
They're gonna have to be creative.
PR
They're gonna have to
fail
be
by the
creative.
Dolphins social team.
They're not gonna. Yeah, they're not gonna get the ball. They're not gonna have a lot. I don't think they're gonna have a lot of success going down the field. Two is just he's not. It's not. But accuracy, he just doesn't have the. He's just not got the strength to outrun coverage. With Tyreek Hill, he hasn't got the arm to get it to him potentially. He's going to struggle at least with consistency of doing that. So I think they're going to have to be really creative. And I think Tyreek Hill has got the ability to be take different ways. He did last year when Kansas City tried to change the way they played, and they played a bit more short ball and get the ball to him in space and get him moving. So I think that's kind of what they're going to adopt a bit with Tyreek Hill, and him and Waddle will be trouble. So, but I do think that their line, for example, Tua is not the best QB, and their line isn't. They've got some decent players. Obviously, Terran Armstead's there now, but they haven't got a great line. We could terrorize that line, really make it difficult for Tua to even think about trying to get the ball to Hill or Waddle. So, yeah, I think we match up well with them. New England, like we said, haven't done a lot, but they're still going to be competitive because Bill Belichick's the coach. Buffalo are a team who are a good team, but they're not susceptible to not throwing one away here or there. So I think if we can go 3-3 in the division, whether we sweep one team, split one team, maybe lose both to Buffalo, or we split all three, something like that. 3-3 will be a fantastic achievement for a team who hasn't even won a single division game for years. So I think it's time to change that. At least 2, if not 3 wins, that'd be really, really fantastic. if we're looking at different positional groups now, we go through the kind of the schedule. Opposing opposing kind of defensive backfields versus our receivers. I think we're pretty happy where our wide receiver core is. We're very excited about the potential of Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis being a great stalwart there with what Braxton Berrios does. Maybe we add another body. What are some of the defensive backfields that we're looking at that are going to create some of the issues? I think starting off Buffalo is one, right? They've got Marcus Peters, they've got Marlon Humphrey, they've got Chuck Clark, they've got Carl Hamilton, and so they've got a lot of players. But is there any other ones as you go through the schedule that you're kind of thinking that's going to be a little bit hard to throw the ball on them, and Zach might have to kind of rely on the run game a bit against those opponents?
Yeah, I think if it's not Baltimore you're focusing on, it will be Buffalo.
Yeah,
Because of Tre'Davious White, and they just drafted Elam as well. So
yeah,
they do have a back, and Buffalo are a team that their defensive backs helped so much by their pass rush, and obviously they brought in Von Miller as well. So that's going to be a hard team to throw the ball. It's going to be a hard team to run the ball on. I mean, defensively all around, they are a very very good team. Um, but I
Green
do think
Bay,
they're going to
Green
Buffalo are
Bay
going to
maybe. Yeah,
Green Bay potentially.
yeah, they got.
Yeah,
I think Douglas did well last year, and obviously they got Jay Alexander, decent safety. So that's probably a
and Stokes in his second year as well.
yeah. Oh
So
yeah, that's Stokes, of course. Yeah, yeah. And I think, but obviously the Broncos. The Broncos with they've got some.
Satan.
They've got and Simmons, right? So in terms of yeah, I think those are the ones you're looking at is in terms of the ones that are going to be the most troublesome. But it's good because I think it's interesting that probably the best defense we're going to play the all round. The two best defenses we're going to play all year are going to be Buffalo, which unfortunately we have to go up against them twice, and the Baltimore Ravens. I think that every other team. I guess the Steelers. You would say the Steelers potentially.
Steelers have great pass rush, don't they? With TJ Watt and
Yeah,
Hayward
but they're beatable. I think they're semi beatable. In the backfield, I don't think it's a worry. So you got to look at those teams. Who are you know who are you dealing with on the line compared to what they can do in the back seven, right? And that's where you're basically trying to work out how you're going to beat each team, because I think we're quite even. We can run the ball if we need to on a certain game. I think we have confidence that Zach. We have to have confidence that Zach will be able to spread the ball out and get it to these talented wide receivers when we need to as well. So I think you're looking at for those matchups that are going to be like, oh, they can stop the run and they can stop the pass. So you're going to move the ball. Buffalo have been really good at that in the last few years. Baltimore, and then yeah, I think there's different teams that have different things. That like the Steelers, great pass rush like you said. So there's the Browns with Myles Garrett. Um, and so I think each team has their own ability, but those are the ones that you think, okay, that may be tricky to beat them either way, and we're going to have to kind of keep it kind of a low-scoring game if we've got a shot at this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just feel so much more confident in our offensive line this year,
Mm.
and I think a lot of it is predicated on getting pressure on the quarterback Zach in terms of how we're going to be able to move the football, especially down the field. When you have a young quarterback, and he's I've got high expectations for Zach going into year two. I mean, he looks beefed up, he looks ready. Teammates obviously really like him. He's got all the weapons around him that he could possibly need. But it's those bookend tackles as well. Having Becton, hopefully, if he comes back healthy, if Becton doesn't do that, then you start to be concerned a little bit because we don't have that safety blanket of Morgan Moses this year. He's in Baltimore, so we'll see him week one anyway. Um, but do you want Max Mitchell starting? Do you want Connor McDermott? Who's going to step into that role if he isn't? So
Mm.
you know, but we're not alone in that kind of worry. A lot of teams don't have quality depth behind their starting offensive linemen. I mean, we're not the only team in the league that would be like, oh, if our left tackle or right tackle goes down, we might be in a bit of trouble. I mean,
But-
Cleveland, when Jack Conklin went down last year,
mm.
they weren't half as good in terms of the offensive line after Conklin was out. So
It's just they don't go. You don't get many of them around the league where you get
no,
good. And so the fact that we had three last year, I think we're freaking out because we don't have as good a situation last year, which was a crazy situation that we had three quality starters and we lost one after 1 week. So then we had the
but you
two
never know
quality
what's going to
starters.
happen, do you?
No,
Because Morgan Moses wasn't. If we were talking this time last year, Morgan Moses wouldn't have been in the building. So
exactly.
he didn't come until later on. So maybe someone like that breaks free again this year,
Yeah.
and we do get that quality veteran depth. But hopefully we don't need him. Hopefully I'm falling short of calling Betts an injury plagued, because it was just a freak accident last year, and yeah, it
Yeah.
took a little bit more time than we wanted it to. in terms of the healing, but he couldn't really prevent that injury from happening. I mean, his back was turned, he got rolled up on. So, you know, there's no reason to expect that he won't be able to stay healthy this year. Like there just isn't. Um, so it's going to be interesting to look. But I do think, that's the area of concern, because if you don't have that quality against some of the pass rush like Buffalo, like Pittsburgh, and people like that, we will struggle if we have to put in someone like a Conor McDermott or a Doga or whoever that is.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that impacts Zach, and as good as Zach is, and as good as the wide receivers are, they need time to get open. We need time for plays to develop. But there's no point thinking negatively about it. At the minute, as we stand right now, we've got two fantastic tackles. We've got all the skill position players we need, and Zach's primed for a breakout year with a good offensive coordinator. I mean, I can't remember the last time all three of those things were in place in terms of the offensive line, the quarterback, the skill positions, and the coordinator.
And the second year with that
In the
system
second
for our
year,
QB, I think it's really promising. I mean, just touching about I'll talk about Zach in a second, but touching on the tackle situation, I think what they need to do is maybe just let's get someone who's not like, can we get someone who maybe isn't as good as our two starters, but maybe not the drop down to Conor McDermott or relying on Max Mitchell to make an incredible step up. I think that's what they do. You may not get a Morgan Moses, but you've got to get someone who can be kind of a decent backup should the worst happen. So someone who can hold the fort and not be an absolute turnstile. That's the hope, right? But that's easier said than done. But you got to wait for those players to maybe become like Morgan Moses last year became a cut. And we went and got him, and maybe there's someone else out there. And you do trust Joe Douglas to really have his finger on the pulse of what's happening, and to kind of investigate all these players who hit the market unexpectedly. So hopefully they do find someone who can just be that bit more of a vet. There you go. If the worst should happen and we lose someone for a couple of weeks, and even if at that bad, it's not going to go completely to hell. So of course we'll see what happens over the summer with all the cuts and stuff as well. But you're right about Zach. I mean, I heard Salah on an interview saying, he was asked about Zach, and he was saying that, the system, while QB friendly, is still difficult to attain at first. Like, once you've learned it and you have a mastery of the offense, it does make it easy for you, the way that things are schemed up. But learning it is not necessarily easy. So the rookie is, him, he's still learning it as a rookie. And you saw improvement from the beginning to the end of the season. I think as he calmed down, he learned more. I think he felt more comfortable. He was saying that throw that we all saw to Keelan Cole in the Tampa Bay game is something that Zach was very comfortable with, and so you saw that he was able to just let his natural ability come out because he wasn't overthinking it. And we said that all season, that some of the really shocking play that we saw, especially on the short game from Zach, was a lot of a mental game. And once he kind of cleared a bit of that, it improved significantly. So hopefully in year two, he's built a bit better for the rigors of the season. He's got a second year under his belt with his offense, which is always a good thing. And he's the only QB going into year two with stability of carrying over. So yeah, I'm very excited to see it. And it's just one of those situations after the Carl Lawson situation last year. With the NFL, you just never know, right? So you just hold your breath until you just hope that we get to week one pretty much unscathed, and we have our best players out there ready to really go up against some of the better teams and really show off what they need to do. In terms of the QBs that we're going to face, I mean, it's not exactly a murderer's run. There's a lot of kind of situations where there's a few players here that may, you're going to face some good QBs, but I think there's a lot of games where it's a younger QB or a guy who's holding the fort, and maybe a guy in the waiting. So there's a lot of players. I mean, you're looking at it's Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Rodgers and Wilson and Josh Allen, right? Kirk Cousins, maybe. He's a decent starter, but outside of that, you've got second year starters. You've got guys who are journeymen or rookies who are potentially coming in. I think it gives us the ability that we're not going to be facing, I think it was MYJ Matt who someone put up a list of the 2014 run, and our first 7 games was ridiculous. It was like Manning, Brady, it was like Russell Wilson. It was like a ridiculous list to start off the season against a QB, just absolutely, murderous row. So how do you feel about the QBs generally that we're going to be facing this year?
I think it helps when 4 of our games are going to be against Tua and Mac. There was a time when obviously the QBs in the division were significantly tougher than on paper they are at the minute. So having 4 games against Tua and Mac instantly kind of reduces that possibility to get, if you substitute Tom Brady with Mac Jones, and all of a sudden you've got 4 games against Josh Allen and Tom Brady, it makes it significantly different proposition.
Hmm.
But I'm not overly scared of any. I mean, Joe Burrow is, just because of his receiving threat as well, the talent he's got around him is going to be a difficult one. Lamar Jackson can be beaten in terms of his ability to push the ball down the field, but because he's got that multi-dimensional threat with his legs, it's quite a difficult proposition.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, you're not going to be scared, are you? I mean, week 15, Jared Goff, and then you've got,
Trevor.
Trevor Lawrence and whoever's going to be starting at
True
Seattle
luck.
in week 17, like
or,
we don't know
or
yet,
Gino,
and then finish with Tua. So
yeah.
you've kind of got like an end 4 games there. You've got Justin Fields in there, and I'm a massive Justin Fields fan. I think he's a fantastic quarterback, but the Chicago Bears have basically tied one hand behind his back with, I can't look at that depth chart and not feel a significant amount of sorrow for Justin Fields' career progression at
It's
the
a
minute.
Sam Darnold all over again. Again, we don't know how good Sam would have been, but in terms of the team not really doing anything to help the situation, it's the same situation. You've got a talented guy who may or may not make it, and you could be making the decision for but some of these QBs just don't make it because of the landing spot. So I hope that's not the case. I like Justin Fields. I hope it is the case in week 12 and that we can dominate their line, which is a bit shaky, and he's not got the time to find the receivers who don't on paper look very good.
I mean, if DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner can't shut down the Chicago Bears receivers, we're probably in a bit of trouble.
Yeah. I saw some of our friends at the Chicago Bear UK fans were talking at some of the options of who they could maybe potentially trade for, and Denzel was a name they were listing as like the guy that could be the guy they want to get, because they think the physical upside of what he can do is kind of matching what they may be missing from what they've got. I'm like, okay, we'll see. I mean, you talked about that Denzel in between these two shows that we've had since the last one. Obviously, a lot of positive news has come out about Denzel. And there's obviously been that too. Like, okay, great, but is it just speak to kind of heat up his trade market? Where'd you fall on that one? Just to splitting off in a second for Denzel. Where'd you fall on that? Do you think it is all hot air to blow up the trade market for him?
I don't think it's all hot air, because the videos we've seen, he does look faster, he does look stronger, he does look bigger. Like, it can't all be false just because of what we've actually seen. But I think there is an element of it's being inflated a little bit. So if we did want to move him, it does get us a bigger return. At the minute, he is our wide receiver 5. If you look at all the options that we've got, I mean, Davis will be ahead of him. Moore and Wilson will be ahead of him. Braxton Berrios will be ahead of him.
Yeah.
So then he comes in at wide receiver 5. So, but I actually just think he's going to stay. I do just generally have a good feeling about Denzel Mims this year. I just think the expectation's so much lower, the pressure's so much lower. I mean, if he ended up with kind of a 25, 30 catch, 400-yard, 2-touchdown season, that's actually would be seen as a success based on what we've seen last year. So I just think, there's such a big thing for having depth. And it's where people say, oh, maybe we'll trade Bryce Hall because he took Sauce Gardner. I'm kind of like, no, we've only just got depth. Let's not start trading it away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so especially when it's cheap.
I don't mind.
It's cheap depth, right? Denzel,
exactly.
Bryce Hall, they're both good people to have with a lot of ability. I mean, we haven't seen it from Mims, but we've seen it from Hall. I mean, he definitely hold his own. He's not incredible, but he's a very, very good. I mean, where he's slotted right now as the third cornerback. I mean, if one of our guys goes out for a week or two, you're not devastated. You're like, okay, that's we're going to miss them. It's like from what we expect from DJ Reed and Sauce. But if Bryce Hall's coming in, you're not going, oh no, not Bryce Hall, because he did a really good job. A lot of pass deflectors. Yeah, he's not the best ball hawk kind of guy, but he's very good at kind of being sticky, being difficult to beat, and then breaking up those passes. So you could do a lot worse as a guy to fill in for your two main guys.
Yeah, and I don't with Denzel Mims, I'm not sure his value could get that much lower after last season. He barely saw the field, and I mean that's he was healthy and he wasn't seeing the field. That's kind of the biggest detriment to trading anyone, is to have a healthy scratch like week after week,
right? Because the
and
other teams were like, hey, you can say what you like now. They're not. I mean, there may be an idiot GM out there that may trade trade significant assets for him. I don't doubt Joe Douglas could maybe find that person. But most of them are going to like, yeah, you can say what you like right now, but this guy was a healthy scratch last year and he wasn't playing. There's a reason for that. And so I've always said like he's not a locker room cancer. You know, he seems to be a good dude in the locker room. And so why trade for such low amount when you've got such a potential there? Like, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you could trade low, and he end up making fulfilling his potential could be very very high. He's got a very
I
high
mean,
ceiling.
if someone comes in and says, "Look, we'll give you a second round pick for him,"
Yeah,
I'd probably say, "Yeah, okay,
of course,
okay,
yes,
that's good." But if they're talking a fifth round pick, it's completely pointless trading a fifth
it
round pick
is
for someone that's still got 2 years of control and an incredible athletic profile.
exactly.
Like, let's just see what he can do. Because even after this year, I mean, the worst case scenario is he doesn't play again this year. He doesn't do anything, and then
We
you
get
have to
nothing.
trade him, and you get a fifth or a sixth or something because you've still got 1 year of control on him.
Yeah,
That's the worst thing that's going to happen. The best thing that's going to happen is he fulfills his potential. Corey Davis could be cut next year because there's hardly any kind of guaranteed money on his contract, and Denzel Mims then goes
takes that
into that
role.
Corey Davis role.
And then
I
if
mean,
you
everyone said when
exactly,
Corey Davis came over, what a great mentor for Denzel Mims. Their games are very similar. So let's just see what happens with that. And I think that's what they're going towards. They want to see if Denzel Mims could fill that Corey Davis role. And then you save, I don't know how much Corey Davis's contract's with, but it's 10, 12 million, whatever it is,
yeah,
in 2023. You put that into another area that needs a little bit more attention. So, um, you know, Denzel Mims has a lot more value to us in terms of a potential development character than a fifth round pick.
oh yeah,
Like, he just does. So, I appreciate that a lot of people are saying it is hot air to inflate his trade, and it might be. He may get traded in the next month or two, but I do think there's an element of truth in it as well.
yeah. But let's hope because as I said, we loved the pick and it happened. I loved loved the player coming out. He had a promising rookie moments. It just didn't work out last year, but there was a lot happen. You know, he got a serious bug, lost a lot of weight. Was behind on the new playbook. He got COVID. And so there's just a lot of things that hit him last year. So I think like I said, give him another year, see how it goes. Where he's looking good, he's healthy. Another year with the playbook. Let's see if he can be that guy to replace Corey Davis. That's the biggest win you can have because then that young trio of receivers on low money. It's just absolutely, especially where the receivers are going nowadays. That would be fantastic, and you'd be able to round out that team and really really push to kind of maximize value in other positions, which will round out the team and make us even more competitive. So yeah, I think the potential there is not worth unless we get a really solid offer. Third, probably at the lowest, is probably I would be happy accepting. As I look at it now, in terms of so we look at the so that's the QBs. We took a bit of a diversion, but that was the QBs. In terms of like the overall skill positions, I know you mentioned that the Bengals being one of those guys. Obviously, they've got Mix in the backfield. They've got all the receivers. Who are the other teams that would scare you in terms of the amount of weapons they can throw at you?
Yeah, so Bengals straight away because Bengals are absolutely loaded. I think Buffalo again. I mean, it's a common trend. I mean, good teams are good for a reason.
Yeah,
And Buffalo are another team that do have plenty of talent. And they took James. Is it James Cook they took in the second? I think the
yeah.
running back.
They got James
And
Cook.
I
Yeah,
quite like him. I think he's going to be a good player,
yeah.
especially in Buffalo. With that line. So I think they're going to be tough to kind of tie down. Who else have we got?
I mean, Denver, right? I mean,
Denver,
with
yeah,
Russ being able to increase, I mean, we don't know what's happening with Jerry Judy right now, but like, I mean, he's obviously a talented player. Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, obviously Javonte Williams in the
bring Greg
backfield.
Dulcich as well in the
Great,
draft.
of
So
course, Greg Dolchich as well. So yeah, they've got good, weapons there, and someone like Russell Wilson's is gonna, improve that. Green Bay have got some promising rookies, as I say they took this year. But they're missing that big guy. But we'll see what Aaron Rodgers can do. I think the other one, sneakily, and they always are a difficult team offensively to manage, and I think they'll continue, is probably Minnesota. With Dalvin
mm,
Cook, if he's healthy,
yeah,
it's very hard to stop. And then you've got,
Justin
Justin
Jefferson.
Jefferson's one of the best receivers, and then Thielen is a wily veteran who's a very good number two. And he may be falling off a little bit. We talk about like fantasy value all that stuff, but as an actual on-field player, I think he can do a lot of damage when you've got someone like Justin Jefferson on the other side as well. So yeah, but I
I
mean,
mean, you probably have to look at Miami as well. I mean,
yeah,
Tua in itself, it kind of drags it down a little bit just because of his lack of ability to push the ball down the field. But when you've got Tyreek Hill, you've got Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, they've got plenty of skill position talent.
and
It's
that
just
running
can
game, right?
Tua
The running game
a good running game.
with McDaniel's running, with Mike McDaniel kind of running that running game that we've got. But he was very much like he was the running guy. He was the running game guy for Shanahan, right? While Mike was more on the passing side. Even though they're part of all of it, but he's the guy who's got the reputation as the running game genius, right? That's been banded about for him. So even if that's lofty, you know they're going to have a good running game, and they've got people like Mostert in, who obviously is from San Francisco. So there's just going to be plug and play. That running game is going to work better, right? I mean, we
They've
don't
got a
know.
lot of running backs as well because they've got Chase Edmonds and
They just brought in
Miles Gaskin
and they
and
just brought in Sony Michelle as well. So
Tony Michelle.
yeah,
Yeah, they've got
yeah,
a couple of fullbacks. Obviously, that's going to probably come over from San Francisco. So they've got two fullbacks in the house as well.
yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how Miami look this year.
But
They're
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it. I mean, there's obviously there's 5-6 games there where you got that's some power on offense. But there's a lot of teams where I think it comes down to the QBs.
mm,
If the QBs don't run the show properly, the rest of the offense isn't going to work. If you can say all you like about how good Najee Harris is, but if Mitch Trubisky is struggling, and if he's struggling so much that Pickett has come in already, you've got a rookie there, you can start to key in on, and they've got some good players, right? I mean, you look at you look at the receivers; they've got good receivers. Najee Harris, a great young running back, but the line isn't great, and the QB may not be good. So there's kind of holes there, and you're thinking this Jets defense. If we can, if we can add like a Quan Alexander. Just to round out the team, if we can fill it, there's a few players there. We're going to be ready to take on a lot of these offenses. So I'm very confident about where we are right now. Like I look at these teams and go, objectively, these are some good teams that we're playing. That first 9 games, yes, a difficult run, but and maybe it's just I don't feel like it's jet colored glasses, green glasses. I'm looking at this, and maybe a bit, but I look at it objectively. I think we have good players. I think when we look at where we were and we thought, oh yeah, these receivers are good. Deontay Burnett is going to rekindle that relationship with Sam Darnold, and Robbie's going to ascend to being a top
mm.
guy. That was kind of us really kind of going, we love these guys, we want to make them good, but they're not good. These are objectively, we've had really talented players
Yeah.
potentially. So
Like you were kind of saying with Pittsburgh as well. It's exactly the same as Seattle because they've got Tyler Lockett and they've got DK Metcalf, but they've also got Drew Lock throwing them the football. So they will be, and that is kind of the extent that we're going to struggle with as well. I imagine if you listen to a lot of different podcasts
yeah,
and they go through the Jets, they'll say, "Oh, the Jets have got some good players. They've got Elijah Moore, they've got Garrett Wilson, they've got CJ Uzama." But it will all depend on how good Zach Wilson looks in year 2, and that's kind of what we're saying. The quarterback does make the skill positions kind of go. So if Zach Wilson makes that leap like we want him to and we expect him to, then we are going to be a very difficult proposition for every single football team on that schedule, because a good quarterback with those skill position players is going to be very hard to defend.
yeah,
If Zach Wilson doesn't make that leap, then it's a completely different proposition, and that's what separates the likes of the Jets from the likes of Buffalo and Baltimore, because they have those proven quarterbacks. So you bring in any skill position players, there's a good chance they're going to succeed because the quarterbacks are already established and you know what you're going to get from them.
yeah.
Whereas with the Jets, it's such an unknown what Zach Wilson's going to be, and that's where our rose tinted glasses needs to come in, because we did see the ups, we did see the downs. A lot of people just saw the downs. They'll look at the stats, and the stats aren't very attractive. The stats would say he was one of the worst
fight
quarterbacks in the
against
league.
that, right? We try to when I speak to any of the fans of other teams, I try to I was with the Lions guys during the draft and speaking about Zach Wilson's stats. I was like, if you, and I'm not asking you to do it because no one wants to watch the Jets other than crazy Jet fans, right? But if you watch the Jets at the end of the season when he comes back from the injury, he looks a lot more comfortable. There's significant improvement there. Now, obviously, that has to translate and can increase the improvement, but I don't think people are seeing that because again, once the Jets, no one wants to watch the Jets at the end of the season, so they didn't see that. They saw the stats at Buffalo. You didn't see what he was dealing with. You didn't see actually how well he saw the field regardless of
Mm.
being chased on almost every
Yeah.
play with no receivers and Connor McDermott and Truman Doga as his two tackles. There's context that we understand, but you could probably say that about every other fan would say their struggling or non-proven guy would also, you could say there's this. So it's all about Zach. It really is. And I know it's annoying because the beat are already circling like vultures on this story. You can tell like they're ready. Like it's all on Zach. No excuses now. Like he's never, it's like already before they said it, it was like that was already coming out. Like, he never made excuses. Like I think I think he knows it's. I think Salah knows it. Joe Douglas knows it. Everyone knows it in the organization. It comes down to if Zach is good. If he's bad, it's 4 wins. If he's okay, it's 7-8 wins maybe. If he's really good, it's playoffs. Like it's simple because the talent on the team it goes by the QB. If he makes that leap, a big leap, that's it's going to go with him. It really is, and that's the end of the day. And it's where you want it. It's where you want it to be because by the end of the season, we're going to have a good idea of what we have with Zach Wilson. Like we just didn't have
Mhm.
that with Sam, and that's going to put us in a better position for the organization to know if he's really bad. Then we go right. Well, we're happy with everything else. Let's go trade for a veteran, or we know what to do, and that's what you want for the direction of the team. Because as much as we believe in Zach, I think Salah and Joe Douglas have proven that they are running the show well, and like I said, they've put a really good team around him, and now it's up to him. So we'll see, we'll see. It's nervous when you get to this, and we've got so much time until we get to September. There'll be so much debates and eye rolling stuff from guys on PFF who kind of want to, throw some flame towards the Jets and get all that, those clicks and views from the Jets fans. I mean, that PFF George stuff was hilarious. The amount of plugs he got for his podcast and all that stuff purely based on that was ridiculous. But that's what's going to happen this summer, and we're just going to have to, batten down the hatches and kind of get ready for it. But I think there is positivity. I think people see the betting line is plus, that plus 5.5 that they set. People are betting above it. And I think there is people seeing that there's some good stuff happening, but we will see about that. So David, yeah, I think let's kind of wrap it up for basically today. I think we're going to look in terms of what we want to do for the off season. This has been, I was saying before the podcast, we had such scheduling issues in trying to get this sorted out. It's funny, the schedule podcast had scheduling issues, which is funny, but we'll work out what we need to do in terms of a structure for the off season as we now go into the kind of the quieter period. And but we want to get stuff out there as much as possible. I've got some potential guests up the line that I'm really interested that we can look back on the off season and look forward to the season. So we'll do a bit of that. But David, is anything you want to say to listeners? Shout out some of the work. The Jets Way stuff is peak stuff. The post draft stuff from David's fantastic. Is there anything you want to shout out specifically?
No, I think I'm just I'm really enjoying my deep dives at the minute. So I really enjoy those articles. I'm a history grad, so research is kind of part of the course in terms of what I enjoy doing. So the deep dives I've done Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, and Sauce Gardner so far. Michael Clemens, Mikhail. Is it Michael or is it
It's
Mikhail? 'Cause it's
Michael.
spelled differently.
Yeah,
It's
they
Michael, but
flip
it's
the
the
E and A.
EAL, isn't it?
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
think it's still pronounced the same. Yeah.
I'd spell it wrong every time I write his name, and I have to delete it and put it back the right way. But yeah, he's coming this week, and I'm really excited about that one because he was probably the guy I knew the least amount about heading into kind of the draft in terms of who we took. So that's going to be a really good piece. So I'm going to have that out this week. Depending on how well my daughter plays by herself this afternoon, it will depend on when that comes out. So if she's good, it'll be out tomorrow. If she's not, it'll be out Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
But no, just really enjoying that, and let's go Rangers. Game 7 tonight. I'm nervous.
Okay.
Come on, let's go.
Well,
Is this
but
coming out today, Andres?
this will be coming out today.
There you go.
I'm going to try
All
and
right.
pump this out on the Sunday. Yeah, so whoever listens to it early will probably be listening to it before. So if you're also a Rangers fan, good luck to you guys in Game 7. That's a great comeback. It's the stuff that we hope for, right? We talked about and we were text messaging. It's like playoff games. Playoff games
Nothing like it.
is the juice. We
Nothing
need
like
it.
it.
It's unbelievable. It's just the more I talk about when I tell other people who aren't even friends, family, colleagues who aren't into American football, you go, yeah, like playoffs. We talk about playoffs. My team hasn't been for 11 years. It's an extraordinary amount of time to not even be
I
there
feel
once.
sorry for younger fans who haven't experienced playoffs for the Jets. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think Matt, co-host Matt, has experienced playoffs with the Jets, has he? I don't think he was following the team in 2010.
No.
So,
I think Craig
so,
Craig joined just before the two big seasons. I think he joined in 08, but a lot of fans, especially a lot of our listeners who, may pick the game up as we go along. I'm not sure how we may have some, listeners who are Jets fans post those games, because there's not much to latch on to. But we very much value all our fans, and I said we are looking to to do some stuff during the season. I'll definitely be able to try and get to some games. We'll try and get as many of our podcast guys to some of these games. The viewing parties in London or where we're going to have them. It's always great to connect with our fans, our family in the UK. So it's an exciting time. And now we just have to hold tight and kind of just bide our time and just wait for September, which is agonizing at this point when we've got so much optimism and excitement. So, yeah. So, guys, we'll be back like I said, we'll be back as soon as we can. Maybe a few weeks. We'll get everything sorted out, and then we'll have a nice kind of roll of podcasts with some great guests coming through, and potentially some really good stuff coming in kind of in the middle of the summer. So, hold tight for that. But yeah, guys, I hope you have a great week coming out. If you listen to this on Monday, hope you have a great week, and we roll on to into the off season. So we'll catch you very, very soon.